Today I have with me a multi-instrumentalist, pianist, composer, and founder of Jazz for Peace. Rick Dellaratta is considered by many to be one of the finest singer-pianists performing today and one of only a handful of jazz artists who can make a successful musical presentation to a large audience without having to abandon the true art form of jazz. He has performed all over the world, and his achievements as a world-class musician, as well as his musical message through Jazz for Peace, were summed up when he was referred to as Mr. Jazz by former President George Bush and congratulated by former President Barack Obama for everything he has accomplished to that point, and challenging humanity to realize that the forces that unite us are far stronger than the forces that divide us. In this episode, we explore the art of learning and growing through curiosity and delve into the challenges of balancing personal and artistic goals. From spiritual and intellectual rewards to finding a philosophy that works for you, we'll discuss how these elements contribute to the big picture of a fulfilling musical career, and any career for that matter. Learn how some musicians have overcome addiction by helping others through their art, the role of stoicism in putting things in perspective, and the importance of enjoying the journey. Discover how inner wealth is the key to happiness, and how one musician's journey to bring peace through jazz began on 9/11 and expanded to a whole movement. Plus, we'll explore how living up to the standards set by others can actually raise your own bar, and how being a leader means helping others bring out their best for the benefit of the team. And by the way, we get our own private concert with Rick Dellaratta performing for us right here in this episode. So let's get started. Have you ever wondered what makes people capable of creating changes that impact their lives and the world around them? What is their way of thinking, their mentality, their patterns, their perceptions of the world, their reactions to different life events? What influences them? My name is Cristina Puyol, and I invite you to join me in this adventure where we will explore together the mind of change makers. Today, I have with me a multi-instrumentalist, pianist, composer, and founder of Jazz for Peace. Rick Dellaratta is considered by many to be one of the finest singer-pianists performing today and one of only a handful of jazz artists who can make a successful musical presentation to a large audience without having to abandon the true art form of jazz. Through his lifelong endeavor to help advance people to their highest potential through the understanding of jazz, as well as spreading peace worldwide through his Jazz for Peace World Tour, Rick Dellaratta is considered to be an innovator and a visionary. He's originally from New York, but has performed all over the world, and his achievements as a world-class musician, as well as his musical message through Jazz for Peace, were summed up when he was referred to as Mr. Jazz by former President George Bush and congratulated by former President Barack Obama. So help me in welcoming Rick Dellaratta. Hi, Rick. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much, Christina.
So
Glad
nice to have you here. Yeah, I'm so happy that we connected. And even though we had a little glitch, that we're here together and that we're going to have a wonderful conversation. And tell a little bit about you. Like, what's your story? How do you get to be a musician so that people know a little bit more about Rick?
Well, probably it comes from, I have a musical background that goes back quite a few generations. Immediately in my family that I knew of was my grandfather. He was an accordion player. And, the legend is that he kind of came from Italy with really nothing but accordion and perhaps a wine press, because he was also a great winemaker. So you had him, and then, his children played music, and especially my father was a classical French horn player. And then I was also fortunate that my mother played piano, and she also played the organ in the church. So I did have that musical background. And then I also had an interest when I was a kid to try and catch Santa Claus on Christmas Eve. And I tried unsuccessfully a couple of times. I just fell asleep, woke up, he came and left. But this one time I thought I caught him because something came in the front door very late. I had to be very sneaky about it because I didn't want, my parents were not wild about the idea at all. So I kind of peeked around, and I did see someone very large moving a large object through the door. I figured it was something that couldn't fit down the chimney, and that was enough for me. He's down there and he's there, and I don't want to get caught. So I just might have just fallen asleep. But the next day, it was a piano that had been moved. I didn't know what it was, but I just figured I better figure it out because Santa brought it here. It must be for some good reason. So I started messing around on the piano, even literally standing up and playing like this when nobody was, but I didn't want anyone to catch me. I wanted to figure it out all by myself. So it kind of steamrolled from there. I mean, eventually someone told somebody, hey, your son's over there messing around with that piano all the time, whenever you're not looking or whatever. Somehow it led to piano lessons. And one thing just led to another as a kid. I was a paper boy, trying to, make some money as a paper boy. And then the music thing kind of took it over. I believe the first thing that happened was my homeroom teacher, his sons had a band that was going to play for all the school dances. So he wanted me to play in that. Then there was like three things. The other one was there was a grown-up band that wanted me to play with them for the private parties. And they said, don't worry, kid, we'll sneak in and out of the bars or whatever. We'll take care of it. And so they would pick me up and bring me home, the band leader. And then on top of that, my mother wanted me to play the organ in the church. So between the three of those, I kind of had to quit my paper route. And that was it for me. That's the only other job I had was that paper boy.
Wow. So we have to blame Santa for you being a great pianist.
It's all his fault.
That's amazing. That's a funny story where you're seeing this big guy. Probably they need a big guy to move the piano. That's such a great story. And why jazz? Why that type of music?
It got to the point. My strategy was I'll play anything because the music I liked was I was very happy with the music on the radio. That was fine with me. And it looked like it could be you could be a star or you could make money, and of course girls are going to attract girls. All of that sounded really good, and it just seemed like you were doing something, bringing people joy, so it looked like it was all a good deal. But I was studying classical music, and I couldn't deny the great artists, the great composers whose music I was playing, people like Chopin. I was kind of astounded, Bach and all those people. And then what happened was I kind of accidentally bumped into some drawer in the library, and I opened it up, and it was all of these, a lot of records. And I didn't know who any of these, who are these guys and what are they doing in this drawer and what is going on here? And I started taking those records out of the library. And then I was like, wow, I don't know what this is. But again, I cannot deny it. I cannot, I can't debunk it. It's kind of like, I've got to get to the bottom of this now, because it was music and there was something substantial to it. Then I found out, it was our country's greatest art form and all of this stuff. And then it tied into my interest in figuring out the piano by myself, because that was a very improvisatory act. I was all set to learn it by myself, and I continued my own explorations whenever somebody wasn't paying attention or not looking. And only now and then would my mother, hey, you're not practicing your lesson, that kind of thing. That was the only thing that really get me to practice my lesson, was when they would say, hey, what are you doing over there? So that exploratory side of me really connected with these jazz musicians that I discovered in this drawer of a library. So I felt the connection with these people, and one thing kind of led to another. Of course, the classical composers also were great improvisers. And I just figured, I'll just embrace the whole thing and see what happens. You know what I mean? Embrace the whole thing. And there's a friend of mine says something really funny about that. And call it macaroni, he says, a friend of mine.
Yeah. So, yeah. No, it's amazing how curiosity is such a drive in your life and for everything that you do. And so I think that's a trait that we all need all the time. And if you want to experiment, if you want to grow, you need curiosity as part of, one of your values and one of the things that you put out there in life. And I had one time an encounter with a music teacher. I think it was back in school when I was in school. And she told me one thing that really shocked me, because she basically said that, I don't know if she was talking about her or not, but that everything had invented. So Chopin, Mozart had already invented all the classical music. So they were just lucky because they were there first. And I thought, wow, that's a very different way to this. And that's just to say that, creativity doesn't end. And she was basically putting an end to creativity. So I thought that was a very fixed mindset way of seeing music. So I was shocked to see that. So I'm happy to see that musicians have this creativity and curiosity driving them, and I think we should all have that. So in your journey, how is it because we all have, or many have, the idea that musicians have a hard life. You have this, on one side, all this creativity, but then the business side and living off your music, it's very hard. How is that for you?
It's really an astounding challenge, because you keep thinking that, if you do this, then that you're going to get that result, and so often it's very difficult to put together some kind of a package that works, because there's so many things that you care about. A person who only cares about money, it's a whole nother ballgame, especially if they're willing to throw their ethics out the window and their morals, and they become a psychopath. You can really make a lot of money on this planet, as a nutcase, you know what I mean? Yeah. But once you have integrity and you have all of these other qualities, and you have musical goals, artistic goals, man, it becomes complicated and it becomes difficult. And it's just, I found a lot of the times that sacrifice is the best way, because, you often have to sacrifice artistically to grow, and I would find myself doing musical projects for the growth. And fortunately, I would get paid, but I couldn't really continue once the growth stopped. So I would, and sometimes you grow into something that's more challenging financially. And there's stories about this with great, but the thing is, it's part of history. So you have to look at, Beethoven and people like that had the same difficulties. In jazz, there's the story of John Coltrane. Actually, my teacher was Jackie Byard at New England Conservatory. And I went to that school because I felt like there was something very special about him. And I was accepted in the classical department. He was in the jazz department, but I eventually was able to study with him. But he had told me himself, he said Coltrane asked him to be in his band. And he was going to be, instead of McCoy Tyner, it was actually originally going to be Jackie Byard. And then one day, Train said to him, listen, Jackie, I got to talk to you because I know you got a wife. He says, yeah. You got kids? Yeah. He says, I can't, that's going to be, this is too risky. And, I can't take that risk of, the wife and the kids. What if, you can't feed your kids, and that's on me? These are the people that, today we would think, oh, they would have no problems today. But, today, I mean, even when he died, I was in high school and I asked my high school teacher about him. And my high school teachers just said, oh, he's some crazy drug addict. How are you going to make a living if people are describing you like that? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, so it's there's a lot of moving parts that you have to put together. One is the rewards that you get spiritually. There are spiritual rewards. There are intellectual rewards. There is a wealth that you can get from music. It stimulates your intellect. So you have to look at the big picture all the time. Second of all, one thing that's interesting for me with Jazz for Peace is you're helping others. And what I've found is that people that make a lot of, even that people that make a lot of money have a lot of problems if they are not helping others and they don't realize that they that they have that need and they satisfy it. Then you have people that are involved with drug addiction, and I've seen these videos, and it turns out when they found their way, they found something that was beneficial to society and it was helping others. And by helping others, they felt this inner wealth, and that helped them to conquer their problems and addictions. And there's a lot of stories of people who didn't go the path that they were meant to go. And even though even though they might have 4 vacation homes, they're a basket case in inner. You know what I mean? So you've got to satisfy your soul. You've got to satisfy your spirit. And also, it's really good if you can be involved in helping others and making a difference.
I think the mission of everybody is to actually make everybody else's life a little bit better. So contribution, it's a big thing. And I think it's one of the basic needs that if we fill that cup, then we're going to feel better too. So yeah, you're right. And then also balancing your life so that you get nourishment on your spiritual side and your economic side too. But all of that has a value that you have to take into account. And I think as an artist, and I want to hear your point about this, is that the one thing is to be the artist, and that's the art form, and to be good at that. But there's also the business side of your art form, and you also need to learn some of that so that you can get some money out of it. Otherwise, it's a hobby or a passion that you have, right? What is your input on that?
Well, that's very true. And I think what's crushing is that whole dichotomy, because on the one hand, if you don't figure out a way to make a living, then you're stuck with, trying to play catch up in a sense. Maybe you're a taxi driver or something else, and then you're trying to catch up after your job. That's very difficult. So you've got that weight on your shoulders, that almost impossible. Because you mentioned Spain and you're in Spain, when I was thinking about the story of the bullfighter, right? The bull, that's a rigged game, right? They stabbed that bull like 4 or 5 times and then the bull comes out, and of course the guy looks great, but he's fighting a handicapped bull. That bull, if they didn't drug or stab or slice him with these swords and stuff, that bull would probably destroy the guy. And this is what you're up against sometimes as a musician. You're up against a situation where you're the bull. You're going out to the battle with four swords inside you. And there's a numerous ways that can happen. One is the situation that we just spoke of, where maybe your true calling is to be in your heart is to be the artist, but you have to get the job, and now that job is tiring. You come home from that job and you're tired, and maybe you have other responsibilities. How are you going to get? Now you're out. You're like a bull trying to fight that battle. You're already handicapped. The other one is the music industry is brutal, and you kind of need representation one way or the other. And I will stick anyone in front of a music industry person before I will myself. You know what I mean? I'll literally put a stuffed animal, and go, and do something like that. Just talk to my stuffed animal, talk to anybody. But you have to there has to be some sort of buffer. Otherwise, you just get, it's an uneven sort of thing. And then you've got, the greatest passion of your life that you're doing in the worst business end of it. So you do have to find, interesting for me is that I will often find myself representing the outstanding causes that I do my events for. So that takes me from having to represent myself so much, because I'm standing up for the cause. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And the cause needs it too, because sometimes for them, it's hard for them. It's disingenuous for them to have to speak on their own behalf, whereas I can, and sometimes in their town, people don't believe them, or they think, they take them for granted, that kind of thing where you're never a prophet in your hometown,
Yeah.
I was showing someone an event we did in Nepal, and I wanted to say to him, and I don't know if he understood what I was trying to say, but it's very hard for if you look at that event, for that to happen for someone who was even someone just like me in Kathmandu would very unlikely be raised to this incredible lofty status that I was granted because I was coming from another place. When I got back to New York, I got no credit for that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Look what I just did. They looked at me like, "What are you talking about? You're my buddy from, I go bowling with you on Wednesday," or something like that. I don't bowl, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't get, you might even have lost your place in line somewhere. You might even be worse off. But if you look at the event, they're like, whoa, so you have to put things into perspective. I was recently asked for a print article, 5 different things that bring me happiness. And all I did was I started each thing was find a blank that works for you. Find a blank that works for you. And it was 5 different things. And the first one I said was find a philosophy that works for you. And for the one that worked for me was Stoicism, or that's worked for me recently. And it's just, it's a philosophy that kind of puts things in perspective. And you have to do that. You have to find something that puts things into perspective. Otherwise, you can drive yourself crazy. And that's one thing. It's important that if you're going to go crazy, make sure it's somebody else that drove you crazy, not you. And usually you find out that you have to participate in order for you to bring yourself down. You have to play a role. In other words, someone can only do so much, or the oppressive music industry can only do so much to you without you finishing yourself off. You have to let it get to your spirit. You have to allow it to crush your spirit. Do you see what I mean? You have to enable it. So you have to make sure, like, wait a minute. Unless I get all upset, this isn't going to work unless I get down in the dumps, and I don't feel like doing that. I'm too selfish. I want to have a good time today. I'm not going to do that. So you take the part out of you that's playing a role in it. And sometimes you'll find that, you can survive it as long as you take your emotions out of, what the part that you're supposed to play to destroy yourself.
Yeah. You have a dance, and if you decide if you want to dance with a partner, it's like, no, this dance doesn't work for me, so let me change and find someone else. Yeah. I can say it in dancing, which is what I do. So yeah.
Okay. And that's dancing is also the same, right?
Yeah.
Extreme challenging. I mean, because it seems like almost every girl wants to be a dancer. If you ask them at a certain age, they would say dancer.
Many of them, yeah.
Incredible dream of women.
Yeah, that's true. And between all the people that you know through the music industry, what makes someone be more successful than others? What are the things that you've seen with all the musicians that you've played with, and the ones that have played with you?
Well, again, now that's you have to put the definition of success in perspective. Now my perception of success is different than, let's say, it might have been before. One interesting thing that I thought about just in the past few days that has occurred to me is sometimes we learn something wrong and we're worse off than someone who didn't learn it at all. And one thing that people easily learn incorrectly is that fame or success in fame is going to be an addition. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's not an addition at all. It's a change. Because, there have been some events where I was famous at the event. So I got to feel like what it would be to be a big star because I momentarily was. And I was like, oh my God, all these people recognize you. They all want to take selfies with you. Like, that would not work for me. If I would be like, wait a minute, I want, no, you don't get it. You don't get to choose. You know what I mean? That's your reality. You have to deal with a whole new reality. So it's not in addition. So what is success? It has to be more of an inner thing, achieving your goals. Navigating fame, that would be challenging to me. If you could pull that off, to me, you're pretty successful, because I kept hearing of the horror stories of people who were famous and what a horrific, how they were destroyed by the fact that they were famous and they lost their privacy and all of that stuff. So I think really what probably has a lot to do with it is finding out what means something to you And knowing you did your best to achieve that at least makes you right with you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So from there, you have a foundation that, okay, now it might be nice to be right with these other people too, but that's not a guarantee, because if you look at a lot of great artists, some of them were not liked at all during their lifetime. I mean, Vincent van Gogh is an example. I mean, they signed a petition to throw him out of his town. I think it was his hometown. The people all had a petition out, and he didn't sell a painting his whole life. But now we would think he's successful because,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a perspective. For me, it's figuring out, okay, where do I fit in terms of my own personal growth in these areas, growing as a human being, growing as an artist, growing as a musician, etc. I like to feel like I played a good game of life as many days as I can pull it off.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. You play a good game of life. I love it. Yeah, because even as artists or scientists, it's so hard to define what success is, because what it means to that person may not mean the same for the rest of the world, because some artists and some scientists were very unhappy, but what they did was very useful for humanity, so we're going to say they were really successful in what they brought to the world. But are they successful in their own life? That's a question that only they can answer, so.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of times, though, that same person was very unsuccessful until they got that breakthrough,
Yeah.
I mean, you could be, it could take a lot. So I think the journey is very important. I think you have to value the journey.
Yeah.
You really have to value the journey.
That's an amazing point. Yeah. Yeah. I think that for everything, but especially as artists, because in the whole journey, you're growing, you're experiencing, you're creating, you're changing. But I think all in everything in life, you have to enjoy the journey. If you do, then you enjoy life a lot more than if you're just waiting for the last goal, or for that record, or for that, contract, or for that money, or for whatever it is.
Right. And so many people that had, extraordinary fame on a, monetarily level, or on a, notoriety level, were then interviewed and said they thought that was going to solve their problem. It didn't at all. And then there's a lot of strange things. I mean, there's a Miles Davis autobiography, one chapter where he's like, I had this, I had that, nobody would hire me. I was brokenhearted. I was this and that. And at the end of this just horrific train wreck of a year, he says, and that was the best year of my life.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The growth that came from it, probably.
Well, because I think he was living with such vibrancy. So it wasn't pretty, but it was vibrant, it was before he was famous. And he said it was the best year of his life. So, you would never dream that he would say that at the end of that chapter.
And what makes you happy?
I think, it definitely inner wealth, I think, is more important than outer wealth. You need basic necessities. There's certain things that you need, but you're not going to, once you get beyond a certain point, you don't get that much bang for your buck. That third vacation home does not bring as much as, the heat and hot water did. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important. You see a lot of people that have so much, and yet all they can do is get more. But that more of the same thing is not necessarily gonna, you know what I mean? So the struggle for me to at least just make ends meet ended up giving me a lot of inner wealth, because I had a lot of achievement at the end of it. I was shocked at what I was achieving, but struggling so hard. I was struggling so hard just to get the money that the guy downstairs makes selling fruit. But the achievement was so high in terms of the goals I was fulfilling musically and artistically, the causes that in their own words I was helping, the letters that they would send to me. So I think, there's something to be said for that. I mean, that brought me a lot of inner happiness, I think.
And what made you then create Jazz for Peace?
Well, Jazz for Peace really started on the morning of 9/11. Okay, so what had happened was I received a phone call that morning. I was sleeping from a woman who had been taking pictures of me the day before, and she was taking pictures of me because photographers will do that. They will find somebody and that is not well known, but that they think might be well known, and then do this little trade-off where they take pictures and then they keep the negatives, and he gets some free photos. And the story I tell a lot is that Paul McCartney's wife, Linda McCartney, who was named Linda Eastman at the time, she did the same thing. She used to walk around down in Tompkins Square Park and the West Village in New York City, and just see some guy with it would be Bob Dylan, and she'd say, "Hey, can I take some pictures?" Or all those people, Jimi Hendrix. And she took pictures of them and gave them, their free photos. And when those people became well known, she was the only one who had
The
photos.
negatives. Yeah.
Yeah, she was the only one who had these photos. And so she, rose. Then she ended up getting these high profile calls, like to shoot the Beatles, where she met Paul. But she rose to fame that way. Anyway, I was the woman who had taken pictures of me the day before, just in the East Village, in front of a dumpster, in front of here, in front of there. And gave me photos. She called and said, "Hey, because she had a Wall Street job to pay for her photo, for her photography career was being paid by a Wall Street job."
Mm-hmm.
And she was she was downtown, and she told me that her boss's son worked in the other World Trade Center and something happened. And she's like, "I don't know what to talk to. I'm just calling you." I said, "You know what? Let me go up and take a look." Because I was living close to the World Trade Center. And I was on the 5th floor walk up, and it was only 5 floors. So I just walked up to the roof, and I was like, whoa, my God. I saw everything. Only one building had been hit when I walked up on the roof. So, I was like, it was just, so the words just came out, a poem called Jazz for Peace, which I'll do today when I do the little music thing. And it really took on a life of its own from there. But, they say luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So my life as a musician had prepared me for the chance to try to live up to the words that came out of the poem on that day. So it started out as a poem. The words just came out. I wrote them down. I didn't know, what do you do when you're looking at something like that? And I don't know what to do. The only thing I could do was write a poem. So all I had was a poem. And then I recited that poem after, everything was closed down for a couple of weeks. And then when it opened up, I had a major jazz festival that I was performing at. And I recited the poem at that. And then I had another major gig back up this way. This was in Savannah, Georgia. Then I had to fly back up here. And the week after that, I had something, and they had heard about that. And they kept asking me, "Are you going to put it to music?" And then I put it to music, and I opened the concert with Jazz for Peace. And then articles came out, Dellaratta starts concert with Jazz for Peace and all that stuff. So, one thing led to another. And then I was able to say to my, manager at the time, like I said, the person, that I was sticking in between myself and, the people, the big monster music industry. Look, I mean, if you don't mind, if you could just call over to the United Nations and tell them I want to do something, but I had a resume. I said, show them all the things I've done, show them what I've done. Say, I want to do this. I want to bring Israeli, Palestinians, and Americans together, for a concert at the United Nations. And that took about a year of, whatever she would call. And I don't even know how she got through, they probably routed her to this, leave a message there, and, all over our home office in Scottsdale, Arizona, or whatever. I don't know how she would have run around in some circle. Finally, though, I ended up doing that event, of which nobody showed up to that either. But we put out press releases, all that stuff, because it's a corporate media. I mean, if it's not going to sell if you want to save the world, it better sell some toothpaste, I guess, because. Because we notified everybody, and someone even came up to me at the United Nations, and he said, "See all those bleachers over there?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "If a bomb exploded, you'd get all the publicity you wanted." How sad. So anyway, as time went on, people started to, it was after, as time went on, that people started to comment about the significance of what I did that day. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
The 50th, and as the benefit concert series continued forward, with more and more concerts, your 100th benefit concert, your 150th benefit, then people started to see the significance of that event and say things as, I got a letter from Barack Obama. I got a letter from Hillary Clinton. I got a letter from, the mayor of New York City at the time. People started mentioning that in their letters or introductions. And so, it's, one thing just kind of led to another. And I just felt like if these organizations are writing me these letters after the events, telling me I really did make a difference, I should probably keep going and maybe try to improve the program, and just, it just kept going from there.
Nice. So it was kind of like an inspiration moment that you had that just started like a snowball and just got bigger and bigger and bigger. But you also trusted that it had a purpose and that it was useful.
Well, yeah, because I'm kind of trying to live up to the words that I wrote. That's one thing we rarely do. We're really good at saying stuff, but then trying to live up to it, and see what was really tough for me was a lot of people that I admired would say something and I'm like, oh my God, I got to live up to this now. But,
Yeah.
I mean, one was actually Noam Chomsky. I don't know if you know who Noam Chomsky is, but who he is. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I get this email once from Noam Chomsky, and it wasn't very long, just a couple sentences, but he says, this, I don't, it's on our website somewhere, but this thing that you do, this aspect of it, something like that. And then he says, I greatly admire those who participate or whatever, and I'm like, greatly admire, because I greatly admire you, and you're telling me you greatly admire what I do, and I'm like, oh man, I don't want to let this guy down. You know what I mean?
I love that, but that's also kind of like a motivation push,
So many, because I would get so many letters from people, and they would all have, in their own words, have these little things. And I'm like, oh my God, I'd hate to let this one down, that one down,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I could pull it off, but I definitely can't pull it off if I don't concentrate on it, staying at, that level or whatever, I mean, just anybody. John McCain, once sent me and said, things, what a wonderful, things like that. I'm like, geez, okay, well, let me see if I can keep things, it just made me want to make sure I try my best each time,
And I think that's an important thing that I didn't think about before, when you're saying, putting out, when you have these people saying the things that they're saying and having an expectation of what you're doing, and in a way putting some pressure that it can go both ways. When people put these comments, I want to say I don't know if that's the word, but in a way is appreciation, and then at the same time expectation. And so it can put a pressure on you where you can feel overwhelmed if you don't perform to the level of whatever expectation you feel they have. And at the same time, so it can be like a crashing down, where you feel overwhelmed by them, or it can be a pushing up, where you say, okay, I'm going to bring out the best out of me so that I can fulfill that expectation. And I feel like some people maybe can take it the wrong way. Like if they take it as a pressure and don't perform,
right,
to whatever they feel they should perform, then it can be on the wrong way. So it's beautiful that you took it as a challenge. I'm going to bring the best out of me so I don't let them down. And so for you, it was a motivator, like a pusher, instead of something that will bring you down and make you feel like that you didn't belong there or didn't perform well enough or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if I really do my best, and I know I did my best, I did the best I could, then you were wrong for saying it, you know what I mean? But if I didn't do my best, then you may have been right I made you wrong, or I don't want it to be on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
nobody's
yeah,
perfect,
yeah.
but I do feel like, I lucked into a good pro, the thing we talked about, back to the bull again, is that one reason that we do try to do things thoroughly, like learning and studying music, studying all forms of music, is so that we can navigate when things are not at the optimum level. When we don't, you know what I mean? There's a time that the conductor drops a stick. Well, he's got to figure out a way to keep the orchestra going. And I was telling someone a story about how I was in a incredible performance hall, amazing acoustics, unbelievable piano, and I would have loved to have been hired there on the artists pro series that they have. But in the music industry, that's, you may or you may not. You might do everything right, and you just don't, for a variety of reasons. Could be anything. You're not on that. But I was there as Jazz for Peace because of our benefit concert series. I found myself playing in that wonderful hall. It wasn't part of that. So now, but I'm in the bull. I got the bull thing because I'm not bringing my band that I would bring, and I'm not playing for the audience of, people that would, you know what I mean, that I would bring. I'm instead playing for, just a bunch of people. Some of them may never have heard jazz in their life. I mean, much more challenging sort of situation. Some of them might, and some of them maybe haven't. Even the ones that might, I'm playing with people that I've never met before. I have to show up, and they're sidemen, and they're just musicians from that town. You know what I mean? So again, I'm like the bull with, and sometimes that happens, like you would be if you had all that together, but no, I'm showing up with, with these handicaps, with these swords, and I still got to beat the bullfighter, not be made a fool out of. There could be some guy with a cape making fun of me because I'm handicapped here. So what I did was, what I had to do, because I'm starting to play with the musicians, and I know these musicians are not going to be able to just play my show like certain musicians maybe in New York, if I was lucky enough, or some certain towns maybe, or if I had my own band, you know what I mean, which I did not. So now I have to do something because, the sound check is almost over. The people are going to start coming in. So I took these guys backstage and I said, listen, what's your favorite music to play? What is your favorite? So the bass player told me his favorite bass players, his favorite records, his favorite, what we really liked. Then the drummer told me what he really liked. And I decided I'm going to be the sideman for these two guys. I'm going to use my skills to make this bass player sound better than he could ever sound in his idiom of passion that he likes. I'm going to play in that style for him and make him, shoot him through a cannon. Then I'm going to play in the style of which this drummer, his favorite drummers, his favorite music, his favorite albums, his favorite, you know what I mean? That style that he can excel at, you know what I mean? And I'm going to play it what these guys excel at. And that's what we did. And there was an intermission, and someone came down and said, boy, that audience just loves you guys. I don't know what you're doing. You pulled a rabbit out of your hat. They love you up there. Oh, thank you very much, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And the really funny thing was, at the end of it, like the sound engineer or whatever came up to me and he said, what was lucky about you that other people didn't fare so well. So what was lucky about you was you had really good sidemen. You know what I
mean? You just show what leadership is about. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, because he would have thought the exact opposite. He would have either thought I stunk or my sidemen stunk, or both, had we played the show that I was going to play. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
We played a completely different show. And now he thought the sidemen were fantastic, and that was probably the reason for the success of this. You know what I mean? But those are the things that you have to do. You know what I mean? You still have to beat the bullfighter, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. but you demonstrate leadership. It's just how can you, it's about teamwork, and it's about bringing out the best in the people that you have around, and what are their skills, that you can bring out, and then you will all shine together much better. So yeah, that's amazing. And Rick, what is a funny story that you've encountered in all the concerts and things? I'm sure you have lots of them, and you have lots of stories to tell. But what is one of them that is funny that happened to you?
Well, someone told me that him and his assistant were cracking up at this story that I told. It was only a few days ago. Someone he's a musician, and he had performed with Jazz for Peace, and he wants to launch his own podcast. And he interviewed me first to kind of help launch his podcast. And he has a great concept. I think he's going to interview a lot of musicians or whatever. But anyway, the two of them are talking to me as his assistant, and I was telling them this story about how I went to Haiti. And, I mean, usually, you bring people from Haiti, you bring them here, you bring them somewhere else, and I said to him, I told him the first time, I said, people were so surprised that I was being brought over to Haiti by Haitians, you know what I mean? Because of Jazz for Peace. And I go over there, and when I get there, the first thing I notice is that, and I had no idea, I said, this place looks exactly Ghana, Africa, because I had Ghana only maybe the year before. And I'm like, am I having some kind of a LSD flashback, or does nobody know this? And I'm saying to these people, hey, do you guys know that your country looks exactly like Ghana? And they're like, we don't know what the hell you're talking about. And someone's got to know that. I mean, because I was in Ghana, and I'm like, I feel like I'm in Ghana. I really do. I feel like you could have told me you could have told me you rerouted the plane, it got hijacked, and I would have thought I was in Ghana, Africa. So this went on for days. Finally, at the end of the trip, someone said, Rick, you keep asking us, and I got to tell you, the reason that we don't know this or nobody knows it is because probably no one's ever been to both Ghana and Haiti.
Yeah.
You're the only guy that's ever been to both places. So you're the only guy that knows this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so that's the thing. I mean, Jazz for Peace has taken me places that nobody's gone to. And because of that, I'm sitting here with knowledge that's blatant, but nobody knows it because no one's ever been to both places. Most people have never been to either.
Yeah,
you know what
exactly.
I mean?
Yeah,
You're lucky if you've been to one.
Yeah.
Good luck. But forget about it. If going to both, forget it. Good luck finding. You never find somebody who's been to both, and I never have really. Once in a while I found someone who maybe went to Ghana, or because even if you go to Haiti, in all honesty, you go to the Dominican Republic. That's where people go to vacation.
Yeah. Well, it's two different countries. They have nothing to do, even though they're side by side, very different countries. Yeah.
Right. And what's also strange, well, see, it only makes sense because the first place they took me when they brought me to Ghana was the slave castles. And they're these giant castles. They're on the coast, and they would march the slaves, kidnapped by their own people, because it was such a big, money
business,
thing. Such a big business. They kidnap their own people. They bring them to these slaves, and then they put them on these ships. Well, those ships then went to Haiti. Those people ended up becoming part of a slave uprising. Okay, that overthrew them because there were so many of them after a while. And those people then learned Creole, they learned French, like the French people, and then they were brought from there to New Orleans, and they gave us the word jazz, spelled Jass.
And what does it mean?
Well, jazz is a misspelled word, because jazz is a Creole word. It means lively music. And that's what they called what Louis Armstrong and his people like that were doing at that time, as they were just trying to figure out jazz, and they were just trying to, it was growing and developing, and they called it that. So when I got to Haiti, there was a big giant sign at my event that said, "Welcome, Jazz for Peace." JASS, their word.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So that's where I learned that jazz is a misspelled word anyway. And so I took the Z of, because it was misspelled. And then I took the S's off too. Nobody knows the right spelling. Nobody knows it spelled that. And I ended up with something called free, just J-A. And that's what's led to this thing that I do on all the different podcasts, this little free improvisation to as a stand for freedom of speech, freedom of journalism, honest journalism, reporting on journalism, protection of whistleblowers, and all kinds of things that are really important right now.
So I know you're kind enough to want to play something. So do you want to do it now and just share either your song?
Brought it up. Yeah, well, so Free JA, which is, it's cool because the initials are for, who we're trying to free here. And what's kind of interesting about it is that's taken on a life of its own because we just had a breakthrough with the New York Times and 4 other, major agencies coming out and saying they also support this idea. They're also in support of this. And so I don't know if there's if there's strength in numbers, but one thing I did notice with the benefit concert series is as it gets up, like you did 50 benefit concerts, when it got into the hundreds, 500, at the 500th one, I got a letter from Barack Obama. At the 250th one, I got a letter from Michael Bloomberg. You see what I mean? So, it starts to resonate. And I just hope that, what I'm doing is helping along with so many other great people. I mean, Roger Waters is doing an incredible job. Noam Chomsky is one of those people who's in this group of people that, is fighting for justice here. So anyway, what I'm going to do, because I know you had told me off camera about your experiences at Riles and that, the Latin jazz and the Brazilian night.
Yes.
Okay, so this is actually just for you. I do something very unique on every one. So this is for you, kind of. It's going to start out with a little bit of Latin jazz, but kind of a holiday song. So it's like, What Child Is This? It's called, or Green Sleeves, people call it, but it's Latin version. So then the Latin thing is going to go into a free improvisation where I recite the Jazz for Peace poem. Then I continue into this free J thing. And then I'm going to finish with just, a short version of a Brazilian classic by Ivan Lins, one of the great Brazilian composers. That's another story, maybe for another podcast, but it's called The Island.
Nice.
So hopefully it'll bring back memories of your Brazilian experiences upstairs there on Thursday nights, right?
Yes.
Was it Thursday? Okay, because I was featured there once on a Thursday, and years later, I had a Jazz for Peace event, and I wanted to do Brazilian Jazz for Peace, and I called a drummer, that I never played with, but I liked what he was doing. And he said, "Oh, no, Ricky, I'm familiar. I heard you." I said, "How?" He said, "You played at Riles." And he said, "It was on Brazilian night. And I was in the Brazilian band upstairs. We all came down and listened to your set."
Nice. Yeah. Nice. So I will stay silent so that you can switch the...
Yes, and I have to turn this on. And just remember. Yes. Okay, so here we go. hear jazz for peace coming through the trees. In my heart it fills me like a celebration. I see the light and I want to follow, inspired by the past contributions of those that came before. Lay groundwork for us to build on. This universal language that is a gift for all mankind. When we speak it, people are enlightened by the creativity and artistry that stands for peace, love, and humanity, and intelligence that leads to reaching potential. That we have in our soul. So we can raise our total conscience and see giving is our greatest privilege. I hear jazz for peace. Make believe we've landed on a desert island. Bathe me in the waters, warm me in the moonlight. Taste me with your kisses. Find the secret places. Touch me till I tremble. Free my wings for flying, and catch me when I'm falling. Keep your
I clap. I don't have the clapping motion. Thank you, Rick. That's such a privilege to hear you firsthand. So nice, so nice. Thank you so much for this. For me, it's amazing to see an artist improvise and just do their thing and see them loving it so much. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
And before we leave, I know I always ask this question, but I think in your case, I really want to ask it, and it's, what is a change you want to see in the world?
Well, I would like to see every country experience Jazz for Peace, because we've been 9 times to Africa. I don't know how, by some miracle we've been 9 times to Africa. And I had, amazing experience performing in Spain. The one time that I performed there, it was just a blast. And I think I told you off camera the story of someone who was at that concert and recognized me in New York, at that one time. And so, I would like to, at some point or other, bring Jazz for Peace to Spain and some of the other countries that it hasn't been yet, so that, everyone can have a chance to experience something once. I always thought my goal was to be a good enough musician that I was qualified to play every place once, and then just doing that would be a career in itself. And then, of course, some places I would play more than once because, they like me or I like them, or I worked out for the schedule. And it's happened with Jazz for Peace. I mean, we've had a lot of multiple grant recipients, et cetera. A lot of countries we've been to, many. But, there's nothing, I mean, Spain is as good as any place. And so I would like to, some of these countries that haven't experienced Jazz for Peace, I would like to see that happen, just so people can get the flavor of what we do, see if it rubs off on them in a positive way.
I think music has such an amazing power to heal and to bring people together and to bring joy into people's lives. So for sure, I really hope that you can go to all the places in the world and everybody can get to know this movement that you've created. So I'm really thankful that you've been here and then you share your knowledge and your adventures and that we can see you here.
To do it, like, what we really need is an outstanding cause in Spain or wherever the country is to find out about us. And that's kind of how it happened, with all the places we've went. An outstanding cause was told about us. Someone told someone, hey, you should check out Jazz for Peace. They did, maybe through your podcast, they listened to your podcast. Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
We're an outstanding cause in Spain. Let's send them an email. And what they would do is send us an email at info@jazzforpeace.org, just saying, I saw your interview with Christina and blah blah blah. That you made a good point there, that or whatever. And then that's how it starts. Just little things like that. People just writing us an email from out of the blue, something they saw, and then we're able to progress from there forward.
So for everybody that has a cause, they can contact you, and then you will help them create an event which will help the cause, and you will bring the Jazz for Peace, and there's a whole more things going on, I'm sure, but that's kind of like how it starts, right?
Yeah, because we provide a world-class cultural event at no cost to them, plus the staffing and expertise and guidance to help make it a success. Through all of the obstacles, I mean, what's amazing is that, through things that, all these things that happen that could go wrong, all of the things that can and do go wrong, I still end up with a letter from these people saying, we got more of this, we got publicity and awareness, you helped us here, it made a difference. So that's what means something to me, is knowing that, in their eyes, at least, I made a difference.
Yeah. So we'll make sure to put all the information in the notes and on the post and when we put this episode out, so that people get to know you more and Jazz for Peace, and they know it's a resource that they can, get to through you, so that they can do something for their cause with music, with jazz. And I think that's amazing, because that's such a more fun way to raise awareness of whatever cause that needs awareness. So, well, but thank you, Rick, for your patience today. We had a little bit of glitches today with everything, and I wish we could make this a lot longer. So maybe in the future we can bring you back and we can talk a little bit more about the projects that you're on at that moment. But I want to thank you for your time and for doing the things that you're doing for peace in the world.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, Christine.
Thank you.